Okay, so here's the picture we're going to start with. We're going to start by talking about blood vessels. And we're going to start by talking about the main differences between the two primary types of blood vessels. What are the two primary types of blood vessels? Arteries and veins. What color are the arteries up there? Red. And the veins? Why is that? Okay, red is oxygenated and blue is deoxygenated. But remember, last week we learned that our primary focus shouldn't be color when we're looking at vessels. What did we learn that arteries do? They carry blood away from the heart. That's the primary focus. It's direction, correct? It's direction. Now, let's think about this. If we're talking about the left side of the heart, and blood leaving the left side of the heart, hasn't it just come from the lungs? So it will be what color? It will be red. It will be oxygenated. Therefore, when they do the body, and when we're talking about the body, which we will be doing today, because we're talking about the circulation through your whole body that's coming out of the left side of the heart, then all the vessels that are arteries are going to be red because they're oxygenated. Then we'll see capillaries that steal the oxygen away. Then the blood vessels are blue when they're going through the veins, which will carry blood which direction? Veins. Back towards the heart. So today we'll see arteries as red and veins as blue for the most part because we're doing the systemic circulation. If we did pulmonary right side of the heart, it would be opposite. But we're not. So it's going to be red for arteries, blue for veins. Blood flow is still most important. However, looking at that picture, and it's in your book, it's right there on 470, you notice that there are labels between the two pictures and that both of these vessels, whether an artery or a vein, they have the same parts. Do you see that? And these parts could be described as layers. So we could say that there are three basic layers to both an artery and a vein. The outer layer, the middle layer, and the inner layer. But hey, this is A&P. What fun would it be if we called them outer, middle, and inner? We have to get all fancy on you. So look what we say. We say tunica. There is a tunica externa. There is a tunica media. Well, that's pretty close. And then a tunica intima for the innermost layer. I like to start by reminding you that any tube is going to have layers because it's made up of more than one thing. And that every tube has to have a hollow center or it's not a tube. And the hollow center is always called what? A lumen. So you see a lumen in both the artery and the vein. Then before we even jump in and do really picky stuff, can you tell me already one difference between the artery and vein just looking at the lumen? It looks like, for a comparatively sized blood vessel, that the artery right there is a little bit narrower in the lumen than the vein. Would you agree? Now look at the picture above, the slide picture up at the top. This is one of those times where we will actually have a better picture on our slides in our lab than they have in the book, which is pretty cool. But even now, looking at your book, you can see in that slide picture that the artery and the vein look very different when they show them on a slide. The artery seems to hold its shape. The vein seems to collapse. But imagine that we expanded that vein, filled it up with something to expand it out. Wouldn't its lumen be larger? Can you see that? It looks narrower right there, but in essence it's not. So I wanted to point that out. Right. Beginning then with the tunica externa. What kind of tissue do you think it is just from thinking about it or looking at the picture? What are our four basic tissue types? Epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve. Okay? So which of those do you think the outer layer is? It's connective, actually. It's connective, and here's why. Is it important what's traveling through here? So do we want to wrap it up and put some protective tissue around the outside so it doesn't tear easily? Yes, so we make it connective tissue. So the outer layer is primarily connective tissue. You will notice that artery or vein, both of them, it looks like it's about the same thickness, that outer portion. Maybe not exactly, but it's around the same thickness. Not a big difference anyway. The other thing I want you to think of is that if you have a big blood vessel in the body, that blood vessel has to stay alive, right? All tissue has to stay alive. What do tissues use to stay alive? They use oxygen and nutrients and water and electrolytes and all that stuff. But blood vessels don't suck it from their lumen. That's not where they get their nutrients, because most blood vessels are too large for that, or these bigger ones that we're doing today. So where do you think they get their nutrition from? Where do most tissues in the body get their nutrients from? Capillaries and little tiny small blood vessels, right? So look, if you will, up there for a second. Look right here. You see all those cut edges? You can see it better in your book, I know. Those are blood vessels. Those are blood vessels within other blood vessels.